Hamjambo. Good afternoon. Okay, as you heard, we are getting into a new session. The session is as complicated as it sounds. Mother tongue on the page. You're just wondering how you're paging mother tongue. Very lucky to be the moderator of this session. I will be very happy also to have you as part of our audience. Those who are watching us online, if there is an online platform that is relaying this. And of course, with a lot of pleasure and honor to also have a panel of distinguished, prolific writers. We've got some real serious history writing, but not just writing. Writing in some language that you and I will just wonder, are they serious? Mother tongue in this day and age. And so, as you have heard, my name is Francis Mutegi. I am a media and communications consultant. I'm also a project manager, and for that reason, I'm a musician, though my music mostly ends in the church. The other thing about me is that I am currently, or so to say, I am the reigning champion. I like telling people a summary of myself in such a sentence. I am the Media Council of Kenya Lifetime Achievement Journalist of the Year 2025. And so that sums up that I have been in this field for quite some time. Thank you very much for appreciating that. And this great honor that I have brings me to the panel of two distinguished writers that I have with me. And to start my far right, I have got Professor Kithaka wa Mberia. Professor Kithaka wa Mberia has some huge history and profile that I may not necessarily exhaust. He's currently a lecturer of linguistics at the University of Nairobi. He has lectured at the University of Virginia. He has lectured in the University of Hankook in South Korea. He has lectured at the United States International University of Africa here in Nairobi. He's also been able to do great work of literally writing. But the most interesting part about him is that he writes poetry, especially in Kiswahili. And the most memorable one that many will remember is Kifo Kisimani. This is the Kifo Kisimani writer. The said book that you and I may have done, those who did their secondary school said book of 2005 to 2012. And he also did another one that was used by the TTCs as a set book. Was it Natala? Yes. So he's got quite some huge profile. He will explain to us more because his Kifo Kisimani book, Death at the Well, translated in English, is almost translating in Kenya today. Can you see it? Yes. So next in the panel, I have got Jane Obuchi, Jane Obuchi. She's also a writer. She's a great researcher. She's a lover of mother tongue. Her Ekegusii people, I'm sure, will honor her for many years because she writes in Ekegusii. So all her books that I have seen have really surprised me. And so it will be interesting to get to hear from her. How did she choose this language, and did she think about limitations? And that is why I'll start with right away with her to hear, in this era of globalization, why are you writing in mother tongue? Who is going to read your books beyond the Ekegusii?
Thank you very much, Bwana Mutegi. As you indicated, it's true that it's very interesting that I can write, or I decided to write in my mother language, Ekegusii. Why have I talked of mother language? The big question is, why should the other languages be referred to as languages, and yet when it comes to my mother language, we call it a tongue? Ekegusii too should be called a language, not a tongue. It's not any other language, but a language on itself. So I decided to write in my mother language through the influence of Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, may his soul rest in peace. He was my personal friend, and I listened to his call to protecting and defending our African languages, to be particular, my mother language. So it was in the year 2017 when East African Educational Publishers made an announcement that they wanted people to write some stories in their mother languages, Kenyan mother languages. So I tried my luck, and I got the opportunity to develop material for East African Educational Publishers in Ekegusii language. I realized that I'm able to write very well, because in the year 2020, during the COVID-19 era, when people were working from home, I read the book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. It got very interesting. Then I thought, wow, it replicates so well with my community, the Ekegusii community, because the characters, the events therein were very relevant to my society. That is the Ekegusii society. So something came into my mind that I had to translate that book into Ekegusii. But when I started it, my husband was against it. He discouraged me. He told me, just like Mutegi has asked, who is going to read your work in Ekegusii? Do you think you have readers that can read the Ekegusii translation? But I decided to go ahead and complete the translation. And sure enough, it was received very well. And that told me that our people are very eager to read writings in their mother languages, but unfortunately they cannot access them. So I decided to embark on writing in my mother languages. Not that I am not able to write in English, because my first book, which I published in 2017, is a novel, Latest Diary of a Kenyan. It's in English. Then I have written stories in Kiswahili, but I embarked on writing in Ekegusii, translating Things Fall Apart into Ekegusii, Romeo and Juliet into Ekegusii, I Will Marry When I Want into Ekegusii, The River Between, Murambi, the Book of Bones into Ekegusii and Kiswahili, and so many others. Thank you.
Wow. Asante sana. Umetushangaza kweli kweli. Nimeona kitabu chako hiki cha Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. Prof,
yes.
Wewe andika sana kwa Kiswahili. Wategemea mno lugha ya Kiswahili. Lugha ya Kiswahili bila shaka ina upana wake barani Afrika na hata duniani sasa, ndo pengine lugha iliyo na umaarufu zaidi miongoni mwa lugha asili za Kiafrika. Pana profesa mwenzako mwenda zake Ngugi wa Thiong'o ambaye amemtaja mwenzetu Obuchi hapa, aliwahi kuchangia kwa vyovyote katika dhana zako za kuibuka na malengo yale ambayo unataka kuandika katika vitabu vyako?
Asante sana. Nitakujibu swali hilo hivi punde, lakini kwa sababu mimi ni mwanaisimu, ngoja niseme mawili matatu haraka kwa Kiingereza ili waliopo hapa waelewe. I am told him that I will answer him in Kiswahili, but for people who might be from other countries and other continents, let me say a few words, facts, linguistic facts in English. You know, when people hear about indigenous languages, they think these are languages spoken by a few people in a village. And this is what I would like you to take home today. Kikuyu is spoken by more people than the people who speak Finnish and Norwegian. So, there are two levels when we talk about, you know, you can talk about the numbers of speakers and the ability to buy books. Igbo, the number of people who speak Igbo in Nigeria are 8 times, because Igbo is spoken by 40, listen very carefully, Igbo is spoken by 40 million people. Many languages in Europe don't have 40 million speakers. Kiswahili is spoken by more people than the people who speak French. As around, well, the French in France, because French is also found in other places. But if you take French in France, 77 people, Kiswahili is spoken by more than 100 million people. Kiswahili is the 7th language in the world in terms of numbers, 7th. So when people pity us, because sometimes when people say, are you sure you want to write in indigenous languages? They are sympathizing with us. They are saying, how can it be so daft to write to so few people when there are languages that you can use and you become better? When Ibsen wrote his famous plays in Norwegian, which are read everywhere, you know, name of the people, ghosts, etc., etc. So you can write, if you write a good book in the Luo, in Ahero, it will be read someday in Hebrew in Jerusalem. It will be read someday in German in Berlin. It will be read someday in Barcelona, in Spain. On and on and on. The second tiny comment in English before I move to Kiswahili is that you hear people talking about African dialects. Men and journalists in this country, if something has been said in Kikuyu, they will say, oh, it was being done in the local dialect. That is racism pure. It's racism. When we talk about European languages and African dialects, that is racism undiluted. Of course, there's a way in which you can use the term dialect in a clean way. So we can say Kikuyu has 4 dialects. Kikuyu is a language that has 4 dialects. One is called Kikabete, the other one is called Kimadira, the other one is called Kindia, the other one is called Kichogo. Now, when you say that way, as a technical term, that's okay. But when we talk about African dialects, we are being insulted. Those are speech systems spoken by people with the substandard minds inferior to European languages. Now, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, kama ameniadhiri, sidhani, maanake mimi miaka yote nimeanza kuandika kwa Kiswahili kwa muda mrefu. Nafikia kuandika nimeanza mwaka wa 82 kuandika kwa Kiswahili, na wakati ule kwa hakika Ngugi wa Thiong'o hakuwa amechukua msimamo kuanza kuandika kwa Kikuyu badala kuandika kwa Kiingereza. Kwa hivyo mimi nimeanza kuandika kwa Kiswahili kabla ya ule uamuzi wa Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Kwa hivyo hakuna namna ambayo tunaweza kusema Kithaka Mberia anaandika kwa Kiswahili kwa sababu Ngugi wa Thiong'o aliamua kutoendelea kuandika kwa Kiingereza na kuandika kwa Kikuyu. Sababu mojawapo ni kwamba mimi naonea fahari sana wa Afrika wangu. Naonea fahari sana wa Afrika wangu. Kuna jana mahala ambapo nilikuwa naulizwa, maana wakitaka kujua jina, kuna jambo tunataka kufanya rasmi, walikuwa nataka niwape kusikia jina langu rasmi. Maana wamekuwa akiona Kithaka Mberia. Na yule ambaye tulikuwa tunazungumza naye akasema, nilikuwa nafikiria hili ni jina ambalo mwandishi hujipa, ambao tunasema pen book, pen name. Tangu nikiwa shule ya upili nimekuwa Kithaka Mberia. Hii inamaanisha nini? Kuonea fahari wa Afrika wangu. Kuonea fahari wa Afrika wangu. Hivi kwamba ni kila mkimo labda nitachangamkia kuliko kula pasta.
Asante sana Profesa.
Nilipofuzu mara kwanza, my first graduation, nafikia ni historia katika chuo kikuu cha Nairobi na historia katika nchi. Nilifuzu nikivaa kitenge. 79. Kwa hivyo kuandika kwangu kwa Kiswahili ni kwa sababu jambo mojawapo ni kuonea fahari sana wa Afrika wangu na kuonea fahari lugha yetu ya Kiswahili, maana ni lugha ya Kiafrika. Kiswahili is also an indigenous language. Don't forget that, Kiswahili is a Kenyan indigenous language that is spread to Tanzania and elsewhere. Kwa hivyo sikuathiriwa mimi na Ngugi wa Thiong'o ili kuandika kwa Kiswahili.
Naam. uweza kuongeza kifupi, na pengine kabla ukimaliza kuongeza hilo, you can respond to the issue of in the era of digitization, books, the physical book like this one, getting into the field of becoming endangered species.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nashukuru sana. Ningependa kuongezea yale ambayo mwalimu wangu Profesa Kithaka ameyataja. Ni kwamba mimi huwa naandika katika lugha 3. Naandika kwa Kiingereza, Kiswahili na Ekegusii. Ametaja jambo kuhusu majina yetu. Tunapoandika katika lugha zetu ama lugha za Kiafrika, tunazungumzia mambo ambayo yanatendeka katika bara letu ama katika jamii zetu za Kiafrika. Na majina ambayo ama majina ya wahusika yaliyomo katika kazi zetu za uandishi ni ya Uafrika. Maelezo ama matokeo yaliyomo ni ya Kiafrika. Na kwa hivyo labda mwalimu angetueleza maana ya jina lake, kwa sababu mimi jina langu lina maana. Vosibori maana yake ni uhuru. Kama ningekuwa mtoto wa kike ningeitwa Uhuru. Basi mimi ni Uhuru, maana yake Vosibori kwa Ekegusii. Marando baba yangu linamaanisha mimea ambayo inakwea kwa miti, na Obuchi ambalo ni jina la mume wangu linamaanisha kujaza, yani kuongezea zaidi na zaidi. Na kwa hivyo majina yetu ya Kiafrika yana maana. Tuna matendo ambayo tunaweza kuyahusisha katika kazi zetu za uandishi, na katika kazi zangu kwa mfano za kuandika katika lugha ya mama ama lugha ya Ekegusii, nimewapea majina wahusika wangu majina ambayo yana maana. Na vile vile Mutegi ameuliza kwamba hizi kazi ambazo ninaziandika katika lugha yangu wakati huu wa digital, yani digital era.
Weza ukazungumza hata kwa Kiingereza sasa.
In this digital era, I know it's very sensitive and very difficult to write in mother language and expect to have a great or a big readership. Or at the same time, our young people or our young minds cannot concentrate reading a book as big as the one that Mutegi has, translation of things fall apart. So I've gone a step ahead by reading out the books, the translated books or the works that I've done, including the Ekegusii dictionary. So they are available in audio form. And that gets the young people easy time, so that maybe as they travel or as they sit somewhere, they don't have, they are not taxed to reading in the books. They can listen, they can audio listen, they hear how the words are pronounced and so on and so forth. I've prepared or I've made an app which is available on the Play Store, teaching young people, especially grade 1 or primary school children that don't know Ekegusii language, and those that are interested to teach themselves Ekegusii language. So you can play that game or those games that are available on Ekegusii. They are called alpha tiles in Ekegusii. So as you said, Bwana Mutegi, it's not easy, but I decided to take the risk, and I have the hope that with the time, our people will be comfortable learning and reading works in Ekegusii language, because it will be very painful for me when I'm old, or I'm older because I'm old. When I'm older, people will say that there used to be a language called Ekegusii. I'll be very uncomfortable, and that's why I'm taking the pain to put into writing the words of my mother language. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that is really encouraging. To tell that you want to protect that language. But Prof, just wondering, how do the young people relate with your Kiswahili work? I know it has been a set book in school and so on, but generally, how do they relate with the book in reference to these days? Not the same years like when you go into a matatu and you find somebody holding a novel and is reading through the journey. But these days, you find people in headsets, you find people in with earpods and things like this, is that going to hurt your work in future as well?
Generally, people think that the book in print will not die anytime soon. It won't. It won't. Because there are people who would prefer to read hand copy, books rather than. So I do not think that the fact that you can do things digitally, books in print are going to disappear. Just like the fact that there are translation programs, like Google Translator, they will not endanger at all physical translators. The fact that you can write a novel using technology, I can assure you that there are certain things that machine will never do. So we shall continue to have novelists, action novelists, writing the traditional way, poets the same way. Now, how does my book relate to the young people? From the way the books like Kithaka's Money is trending today, most likely even people who never read it in school are reading it today. Yes. And their parents read Kithaka's Money sometimes. Because their daughter, their son, talks so much about Kithaka's Money, and your mother and your father says, I'm also going to read Kithaka's Money. Their siblings who are not in school, the time you told us, 2005 to 2012, many of them read the book. I remember an incident at the University of Nairobi where some lady was working at the University of Nairobi and the brother was doing engineering fourth year. What she told me? She told me that she has seen her brother who didn't give his money, but he has continued reading it. He just keeps on reading it, up to fourth year, he's still reading it. What I did was to get another book of mine called Maua Kwenye Jua la Asubuhi, and I said, can you take this book to him to win him off? Give his money. Like the way a mother can give some solid food to a baby to win the kid from, breast milk. So I think people relate with the Kithaka's Money very well. And what they are doing now, they see it as a weapon. And what they have done is, sometimes some of the trending I see, some of the posts I see, they have taken it, they have even gone to a point of modifying, certain areas to modernize it. Yes. If you ask me, how do I see that? I say, well, they are seeing it as a weapon. And if you can modify the weapon to make it more lethal, because that's what they're doing. All this talk about banging somebody, the hand, they're adapting it now to look like Ojwang, etc., etc. I say, well, it's a tool. It's like you get a panga, or you get a sword, or you get a spear, and it's a time of war, and you sharpen it. The original person, it's not sharp enough, you sharpen it. I don't think the person who made the spear can complain, because the spear is still going to do exactly the same job, except that it will do it better. It will do it better, and therefore, I'm not complaining about Kithaka's Money.
While you are still on that, how does that impact on copyright issues with the digital era, people changing your work into something else? Do you mind? Are you okay with it? And how will it impact your work in the eventual? They do, because what is happening, what is trending, is not a book, excerpts of a book. So really the impact then is not that big. Because I've not seen anybody who has modified Kithaka's Money to send it to other people. They will take a page, a relevant page, or two, and modify that. The question of digital books is a big problem. It's a big problem, not only for me, for other people. On the internet, I see Kithaka's Money selling all manner of places. Here, it sells 5,000 shillings. If you see some of the companies selling it in the US, in Europe, something like, it comes to almost 5,000 shillings. In fact, I tell myself someday, I will just get some money, go to a lawyer, and tell him, can you find out how this online company is marketing this book? Because many of them have never made I've never signed any memorandum of understanding with them. I know
I know I've made arrangements with Kitabu, and I made arrangement with the African Book Collective in London. But many, some of the firms that are selling that book online, I just don't know how they got it. So indeed, there are some negative implications.
Let me come back to Obuchi, and in particular, I will be concerned about artificial intelligence. While we are still on issues digital, artificial intelligence is giving people a platform where you can create things out of ideas that have been machine generated. And in this concept, artificial intelligence is almost creating bylines of people who have not created the work out of their own thinking. Your works have been out of your own sitting and writing. But artificial intelligence is now making people almost copy-paste materials. Even journalists have been copy-pasting materials and putting there. How does that impact writers in the future with this sort of challenge?
Thank you. Let me talk about artificial intelligence in Ekegusii in particular. To bring to your notice, we did a project known as Ularu project on artificial intelligence. That is in African languages, whereby Ekegusii is one of them. Ekegusii and Kikuyu from Kenya. So somebody tried to play with the Ekegusii along the line of artificial intelligence, but it flopped. So we cannot feel threatened that artificial intelligence is creeping into our writing in our mother languages. We have to move with the times. If it succeeds, fine. If it doesn't, fine. But for our mother languages, Ekegusii in particular, I think it has a long way to go, and we have to keep on keeping on. So that is one of the challenges that we are facing, or we are likely to face. Professor should have talked about publishing in these African languages or in our mother languages. I will lie to you if I told you that I've had it easy going when it comes to publishing these works, because whenever you go to the publisher, they tell you that they don't have readership or they don't have a market for these writings. But I want to appreciate East African educational publishers for having published my first book in the mother language. It was a series of grade 1 to grade 6. And later on, I had to take up the challenge of coming up with a publishing house in mother languages. I came up with the Possible Publishing House, which publishes in African languages or in Ekegusii. And I challenged the late Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He came up with this publishing house known as Wanjiku Publishing House. And I want to appreciate Professor Kithaka for coming up with the Marimba Publishing. Marimba?
Publications Limited.
Exactly. So when we started it, it was very difficult, but I want to encourage those that would like to publish in their mother languages that already you have publishing houses in place. So at least for you it will be easier, unlike it was with us.
In reference, just to respond to the issue of publishing, I saw one of your books, you've had it published in Indiana, I think United States of
University
America.
Press, yes.
Yes. How are these people writing Ekegusii, and how will they know abbreviations and so on when they are correct or wrong? Were you seated there?
Thank you. It's true. This book that has been published by Indiana University Press is a translation of Murambi, the Book of Bonds, which talks about the Rwanda genocide of 1994. Initially, it was written in Wolof by Boubacar Boris Diop of Senegal. Then somebody translated it into English, Murambi, the Book of Bonds. And they asked me to translate it into Kiswahili and Ekegusii. So the book is there in Kiswahili and Ekegusii. And they took it and published it there. So it's not that they have an editor there who does the work. I did everything, and they did the publishing.
Ah, okay. Professor,
yes.
Kabla tuje kwa wanaoshiriki katika ukumbi,
Ndio.
pengine tuelezee kifupi kwa manufaa ya wale ambao hawakusoma hii tamthilia yako ya Kifo Kisimani. Wape muhtasari wa kisa kilichomo, kwa sababu kina angaza zaidi yaliomo Kenya hivi sasa.
Hiyo ni kazi ngumu nampa mwandishi. Maana yake kwa hakika waandishi hawazungumzi juu ya vitabu vyao. Na wachoraji, maana yake mchoraji mzuri ukimwambia hebu nieleze hapo umechora nini, atakuuliza, atakwambia utafute mtazamaji mwingine. Maana yake yaliokuwa katika akili yako na yale yametokea kwenye maana yake kwenye mchoro ni tofauti. Kwa hivyo mimi nitaomba kama kuna mtu yote hapa ambaye amesoma Kifo Kisimani atueleze Kifo Kisimani kinahusu nini. Naweza kutoa sentence moja tu kwamba maana yake nimeandika hiki kitabu kutokana na niliyokuwa nikiyaona wakati ambao nikiandika, na hivi sasa ni kitabu ambacho labda kikisomwa na mtu Senegal ataona labda kuna uhusiano wa kitabu kile na Senegal na Kenya vile vile, lakini ni vigumu sana mimi kusema mwenyewe kwamba maudhui ni haya na haya na haya na wahusika wanafanya hivi na hivi na hivi. Maana si kawaida ya mwandishi. Hiyo si kawaida ya mwandishi. In English you say a writer doesn't have the competence to evaluate his own work. A musician doesn't have the competence to evaluate his or her own music. A painter does not have the competence to evaluate their own painting. And that's why we have critics. That's why we have music critics. That's why we have musicologists. This on and on and on. Lakini Kifo Kisimani ni kitabu ambacho kinazungumza juu ya kwa jumla matatizo katika nchi ambayo inaitwa Butangi. Ukitaka kufasiri Butangi kuwa ni Kenya, sasa ni yako. Ukiwa Butangi ni Tanzania, sawa sawa. Ikiwa Butangi Uganda, sawa sawa. Lakini hakuna mahali popote ambapo nimetaja Kenya mimi. Na sikuandika kuhusu Kenya, nimeandika kitabu kuhusu Butangi. Na Butangi ina mtemi katili, ina mtemi ambaye anajiamini sana, ina mtemi ambaye anafikiria ataongoza kwa muda mrefu sana. Kuna mtemi ambaye anafikiria hataki kusikiza watu na nini, maana yake ana uwezo wa kuzima maoni ya watu na kadhalika. Katika nchi ya wapi? Butangi. Kama mambo hayo yanatendeka Kenya, sasa hilo ni juu yenu kuamua, lakini mimi nimeandika kuhusu Butangi.
Haya, nataka tuwape nafasi walio katika ukumbi wapate kuuliza maswali yao. Kama kuna kina Mwelusi hapa waje watueleze kuhusu Butangi. Haya, nikupe dakika moja tu tafadhali, alafu turudi kwa.
Ni kwamba mwandishi anapoandika kazi yake vile profesa ameelezea, hana uwezo wa kuitathmini. Lakini ukweli ni kwamba kazi yoyote inayoandikwa inamulika jamii, na jamii hiyo inaweza kuwa mahali popote. Kwa mfano katika kazi zangu ambazo nimezitafsiri, Romeo and Juliet, kwa Ekegusii nikaita Romeo na Juliet, ni kwamba yaliyokuwa yanatendeka pale nikiyabandika katika jamii yangu yanakuwa wima kabisa. Yani ni kana kwamba ile kazi iliyoandikwa na William Shakespeare aliandika akizungumzia jamii ya Ekegusii. Hata Things Fall Apart nilipoitafsiri nikaibandika katika jamii yangu na ikaingia mule sawa sawa. Basi Butangi, Kenya, Tanzania na popote pale, kazi hiyo inamulika jamii na unaweza kuipeleka jinsi upendavyo. Asante.
Hebu tusomee hili jina la Things Fall Apart kwa Ekegusii.
Vintombi sebererekani.
Haya, batonya alire bwana. Haya, turudi sasa kwa watu walio katika ukumbi. Tuanze na dada hapa na mwenzake aliye karibu naye.
Thank you very much. My name is Kwambuka Akama, and I have a question for Mrs. Obuchi. Yes, I spoke Kisii exclusively for the first 3 years of my life, but then that had to stop when I started school and when my parents moved to a more urban setting. And so then I never really quite spoke it again. And then I decided to go back to it as an adult with what you would imagine is the vocabulary of a 3-year-old, because that's all I really had to go with. And when I decided to converse with the adults who ideally were responsible for teaching me this, but they stopped, there was a sort of resistance. there was a sort of resistance in engaging me in Kisii. And so I just wanted to find out from you, how can learners or adults like me who are going back to their mother language gain confidence? And I know you have your resource with your app. How do we gain that confidence? What other tools are there for us? Because sometimes the people around us may not have the capacity to support. And then number two, I get the sense that as the Ekegusii community, there's an intrinsic sense of shame that we carry around. And I attribute this to traditional spiritualism, which was the center of our traditional life. And of course, colonialism really convoluted a lot of things. And so we carry a lot of sense of shame because of this past that we have and things like FGM. And so we have this sense of shame and self-hatred. How do we sort of overcome that, and how do we grow more confident in ourselves? Because in a sense, finally, I find that as Kisiis, we tend to overcompensate with our hyper-religiosity, our Seventh-day Adventism, and it doesn't help that also people make a lot of fun of us on social media. You know, I mean, God forbid you have Kisii inflections in how you speak. So how do we become more confident as Kisiis in speaking Kisii?
Your sister wants to ask Obuchi or Prof?
Both of them.
Okay, please do. Write down, just note the question so that I will try my best also to remind you.
Okay. Hi.
Try keep your question pretty easy to comprehend.
I'll be done before you know it. Hi everyone, my name is Nyambura Mutanyi and I make literary content as 100 on Books. My question has to do with translation, like training for translation. I see a lot of courses aimed at people who are translating into English from, say, Eastern European languages and other European languages and so on, but I almost see nothing that has to do with, say, translating from Western languages into languages on the continent and so on. So I'm wondering what opportunities exist for people who are interested in translating into all the languages on the continent, as the professor has very wonderfully pointed out. Thank you.
Then I'll let that be responded to by the Prof because he's been doing translation works, but let me start with Obuchi before she forgets the question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your good questions. Let me start with the effort that I'm making towards seeing to it that the adults that have forgotten Ekegusii language get back to the system. It's true that colonialism impacted on us as Africans when it comes to our African languages. When we were in school back in the 70s and 80s, there was the disc. So every time you could use mother language in school, at the end of the day, you would get punished, isn't it? So this disappointed so many speakers of mother languages, and it was expounded by the fact that those that that were able to learn English would be rewarded greatly. So this is spread out to our families, whereby our parents could encourage us to put more effort into learning English because it rewards heavily. You may imagine that I learned Ekegusii up to grade 7 or grade 5. During those days, would be taught Ekegusii up to grade 3. Beyond that, it was Kiswahili and English. So, my sister said that she stopped speaking Ekegusii due to the reasons that she mentioned. I've considered that in my effort to promoting Ekegusii language. What I've done is I'm teaching Ekegusii online. I have one student that suffers the same fate as you. Every time he tries to speak Ekegusii with his relatives, they mock him, they tease him, and they laugh at him so much. So I'm trying to build confidence in him, and I'm happy that he has learned it, and with the time I know he'll be a good speaker, though not a perfect one. At least he will grasp the concepts so that it doesn't become, it doesn't get mocked. So you talked about people teasing us. As Ekegusii, or Ekegusii speakers. You heard Mutegi say, "Mwatonyalire tata." On the social media, we have such. Even when it comes to pronunciation of words or intonations, every language, we should know, has weak points. Even the professor's language has the same points. Even the Luo has their own problems. Wanasema siringi, ni siringi bana, ni siring. Maana yake shiringi, because they are not able to articulate those sounds so well. So we shouldn't, you shouldn't be discouraged. Just keep on learning it, and you will be there.
And she become your student.
You have become my student automatically.
Prof.
Welcome to class.
Prof, the issue of translation.
Yeah, let me say this. Translation, as Ngui Wadiongo, Professor Ngui Wadiongo called it, is a universal language. I don't know whether you are aware that even works written in languages that are widely spoken are still translated into other languages. There are so many books written in English translated into other languages, because it's not true that the moment you write a book in English or French or Spanish, that now you will reach everybody on the planet Earth. So translation is very important. As for the market of books written in African languages, the problem is that of attitude. So we have to make up our minds. Do we want to adjust to the attitude, or do we want to change the attitude? I adopt my own way. I define myself as somebody with a positive stubbornness. I do not think that I follow fashion. As a matter of fact, if I go to a shop, and the shop steward tells me this is a very fashionable trouser these days, a shirt, the likelihood is that I wouldn't buy that shirt, because I want to be able to think and design for myself. So there's a question of attitude that people have been told that from the colonial days, that things that make sense must be written in a European language. That's another. We are back to racism, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to change that attitude, so that, for instance, our bookshops do not hide, so to speak, African books, books by African authors and African languages. If you go to the major bookshops, the areas that attract a lot of people, you will see virtually every book there will be a book written in America, written in Europe, because these are the books that sell. But why are these the books that sell? Why? Can't we change that attitude amongst ourselves for a Kikuyu speaker to know that she can read a book in Kikuyu, and that the book will have such intense ideas, etc., much more, or at least at the same level with the book written in English? Can somebody who speaks my language in Kithaka read a book in Kithaka, knowing that writing in Kithaka it's not any less? Somebody writing in Kithaka does not necessarily mean he has less brains than somebody who writes in French, because that's the attitude. The attitude. In fact, there are people who pity me. Because when they hear, somebody has been hearing that I write, and then they come to discover that I write in Kiswahili, and they can't quite comprehend how can somebody have a PhD and a professor, and they still write in this language called Kiswahili. That is attitude. There's nothing in linguistics that shows that the structure of a Boran or a Ndide is any less complex than French. I'm now telling you as a linguist. There's nothing in linguistics. If that were the case, children who speak a Boran, if it was that simpler, they will learn to speak it faster than the kids learn to speak English when they're born.
Wow.
And unless, of course, you are going to say that the brains of the kid in New York is better than the brains of the kid in Keroka. If we we know today that, from science, that the brain of the kid in New York, in Toronto, in Canberra, is exactly the same as the kid in Kaptagat. But you know what? The kid in Kaptagat will learn Kalenjin at exactly the same time, if they're born together with, born at a particular time, at exactly the same time with a king born in New York. That shows that Kalenjin is not any less complex than English.
Absolutely. I think the message is pretty clear. And I have, by the way, heard him say something that I've just realized. I came to realize that we Africans tend to learn the world more than the rest of the world learns about us. And that is why you go to the streets of New York, Paris, Rome, you ask people which is the capital city of Kenya, they do not know. But you, I'm sure you know, as many capitals in Europe and Americas and South Americas, you can count on your two hands. Any other question, maybe?
Just a small tiny comment. We talk about black sheep, black market, etc., etc. You have been trained, you and I have been trained to know, to adapt, to accept there's something wrong with black. And what I tell people is that if indeed there was something wrong with black, there wouldn't be so many women in Kikuyu called Wanjiro. If there was so black market in the church, you know what we sing? I'm a Catholic. Nitakase niwe mweupe kabisa kabisa. Can you imagine that? You can have a dress which is black, which is very clean, and somebody can have a shirt white, which is very dirty.
Wow.
So this equating of whiteness with cleanness is something that we have to get out of our minds.
Asante, Prof.
Thank you.
I have just another question for us.
My name is Chirag Moria, and I am a tech entrepreneur. So there's a lot of discussion that has gone on about tech and literature, like how these two are trying to be now brought together. Of course, I do acknowledge that there's a big gap between, there's a big bridge on how literature is being explored digitally. And especially with how AI is coming up, it's moving towards a totally different direction. And now, as I said, I'm a tech entrepreneur, so my venture right now is in bridging this gap. So we are currently working on a platform, mobile and web app, whereby we are trying to preserve the true essence of literature. We're trying to redefine how people experience literature in the 21st century, especially if we have established authors. In fact, a good point was mentioned. Some of these forms of literature, they tend to become obsolete down the line because people are not pursuing those languages, or people are not pursuing specific genres in the correct way. So that taste, that form, it disappears down the line. And that is the bridge we're trying to gap with whatever platform we make. In fact, we are ready to go for launch in 1 month. And my question here is about all these forms of literature, the different subtle and dynamic forms of literature that you're exploring, like in Kiswahili, in Ekegusii, in whatever language, whatever genre. What is the biggest challenges that you face when you're trying to expose this on a global platform? You write maybe a book in Luo, in Ahero, in Kisumu somewhere, very easy to expose it. But if you're to bring this on a global stage, with or without translation, with or without AI, what are the biggest challenges that you personally face as established authors to expose your work out there and expose your talent with the true identity that it deserves? And how do you combat it at a personal level?
I think, is there any other question so that I finish with the audience? We are running out of time. Okay. She will respond about the technology. Then, Prof, maybe you can conclude with a lesson to the budding writers, how local languages can work in this era if they really need to adopt it. Okay. But you can respond to the technology aspect. Thank you.
The truth is, in every endeavor, there must be challenges. And so is it with the writing in our mother languages. For example, to emphasize on what Professor talked about on attitude, somebody once asked me, Jane, where did you get Ekegusii words to translate things fall apart? That is diminishing the language. In other words, the person thought that Ekegusii doesn't have enough words that could translate a whole book like Romeo and Juliet. Every language is independent. Before the foreign languages were introduced into Africa, We use it to court, we use it to love, we use it to bring up families, we plant crops, we use it to mingle with the other communities. So that shows us that every language is independent of itself. With the AI challenges, it's true that we need to collaborate with the technology guys like himself, so that we see to it that we defend these languages, because with the time, especially my language Ekegusii, if good care is not taken of it, then it will be endangered.
Thank you very much, Prof. Please close and make it as brief as you can.
I
Tell
will.
the people if writing pays.
I will. The challenge is how we write. You remember I spoke about writing a novel in a hero. Don't write in a hero for hero people, because that book will not make sense to somebody in Tanzania, will not make sense in somebody in Cameroon. The reason why we read the name of the people, and if you remove the name of the people, you will think that the book is written by Kenyan. When you read the government inspector, so it's how you pitch your work. My last book, called Jeneza Kutoka Saudi Arabia, is on our daughters who are mistreated so much in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, etc., etc. I not mention the one in Kenya, but I'm convinced, if that book is written by somebody in Australia, they will hate what happens in the Middle East. If that book is written by somebody in Papua New Guinea, are you capturing the human nature, emotions? As you write your novel in Kikuyu, in Kanyanyaine, what are you writing about? Can this Nyambura be interpreted to be just any other woman in the world? So that somebody called Jane in Australia, somebody called Jane in Austria, feels that I'm Nyambura. So what happened to Nyambura in Kanyanyaine, it happened to me. That's the trick. That's the only time when that book will be translated into other languages. Because even just people of Naivasha, why would anybody in Tehran read it? But I can assure you, one of my books is on incest, which we here, we don't talk much about incest. But wherever you are in the world, you will find it's very terrible for a mature person, a father, violating his own daughter. It doesn't matter. So if you translate that book, then somebody in New Zealand will probably find it worth reading.
Prof,
Thank you very much.
Professor,
we've run out of
tell them
time.
that I've translated
Kindly
it into
just
Ekegusii.
conclude by telling the young people whether writing in local languages pays. In 2 sentences, kindly.
I'm sorry, I'm a teacher, and at university you teach for 3 hours. I'm sorry. It does pay, but it depends on whether you are writing for money or the other driving force. There is another driving force.
Thank you.
I don't write for money.
Thank you.
But if you write a good book in the mother languages, if it's a good book, it can help you to pay the credit bills and the water bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the time doesn't seem to be sufficient for such big minds, but that is why it is a festival of ideas. So I'm sure you've gathered some new ideas. I'm happy that you took part, you enjoyed the session. I want to believe you've learned a lot from them, and their message has permeated into our understanding why we should not abandon our local languages, because they are as important as those international languages that we all know. And you've heard they are also even spoken by a wider audience than those international languages. I sincerely appreciate your participation, and may God bless you all. Asanteni, Prof. na Obuchi.
Thank you so much for that wonderful conversation. Thank you, Prof.